Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boys Sports Podcast. Well, it's kind of one of the offshoots of the show. If you've been watching this series that I somehow concocted, I was actually just talking with our guest about how I have no idea how I thought of this, but I'm very thankful that I did. It is another edition. As a matter of fact, this will be our fourth edition of the exit interviews as we go all across the NFL, talking to media members and players about their takes or their experiences as they went through this past NFL season. And today we have a very interesting team to talk about, the Jacksonville Jaguars. We got Jordon Lugo over here from Generation Jag hanging out with us, man. How you doing, Jordon?
I'm doing about as well as I can be right now. It's starting to get cold down here in Florida, unfortunately. And there's just been a whirlwind of reports and news breaks regarding the Jaguars head coaching search, the potential GM job, everything going down. It's been a wild ride, over the last year plus, really, ever since Urban Meyer was announced as a Jaguars head coach just about a year ago. It has been a whirlwind, as I mentioned, and so I'm sure we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today.
So it's interesting you mentioned that. Somehow I got wrangled into a fantasy football league that is majority guys from Florida, and somehow out of the two teams, they elected to become Jacksonville Jaguars fans. So I get inundated with far too much information about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not happy about it, but this is what my life has turned into. As a matter of fact, they were talking about the head coaching search and Vic Fangio earlier this morning, and I was just like, I don't want to see this at 9 o'clock in the morning. I really don't want to hear people talking about the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars at 9 o'clock in the morning. But, Jordan, you're about to bestow some information, some knowledge upon us. You're a lifelong fan turned media member, which, by the way, if there was ever a path to doing this, to being in this game, that is on point for me personally. I think that's the best way to go, because every person we've talked to so far, we talked to Karen Gregian of the Boston Herald. She's been working at the Boston Herald for 34 years, and she made sure that we knew it started off with her being a fan. Like way back in the day. She's just always been a fan of the Patriots, and now she professionally has covered her favorite team in the NFL for 15 years. She told us her story about witnessing the Tuck Rule game inside the end zone where the field goal went up and everything like that, and it was really cool to talk to her. And then we talked to Joe George, who we talked about. He works for Sports Talk 790 here in Houston, Texas, one of the major radio stations when it comes to the teams. And he discussed the Chicago Bears, because he's from Chicago. He's been a lifelong Bears fan, long-suffering Bears fan. And he's also a Houston Texans fan because this is his new home. So we got great perspective from him. And I'm sure we're going to get even better perspective from Joe. I'm just kidding. Joe's my guy. Joe actually helped me a bunch in radio. But Jordan, I have to ask, man. New head coach coming into the situation, knew you were going to get the first overall pick. Everybody knew it was going to be Trevor Lawrence in the preseason. This is a year ago, which seems like an eternity ago when you're this close to the Super Bowl. It seems like the beginning of the season may as well have been 20 years ago. But you guys get Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne. A lot of people very skeptical of drafting Travis Etienne, which is understandable, running back. But you get Trevor Lawrence. People think the generational talent that he is and everything like that. Preseason starting up, man. How are the fans thinking about preseason, approaching preseason as a whole? Like, what was the vibe in general? And then on top of that, how did you feel like the media was covering the expectations for the team in the regular season during the preseason part of this season?
Yeah. First off, just want to say if I'm peeking down at my phone, I'm sorry. There's just constant barrage of news going on with the Jaguars. And, hey, we might be able to break the head coaching news here on the show.
Oh, but, no doubt. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. There was a ton of excitement. I mean, you have Urban Meyer, a proven winner, who obviously has had his fair share of off-the-field issues throughout his career, but he's a fresh face in Jacksonville. People know about him from Florida, the 2 national championships there, the dominant run he went on at Ohio State. People are kind of looking past some of the off-field character concerns. People are excited about the environment he's instilling in Jacksonville. People are excited about Trevor Lawrence, who say what you want about how his rookie season went. I mean, the kid handles himself with such class. You can see the talent every time he steps on the field. People were excited about Travis Etienne. There was definitely some skepticism there about the pick or when the pick was made. And, you know, Urban Meyer, that's another. It's funny you brought up Etienne. That was one of the moments early on where you kind of were like, does Urban Meyer know what he's doing? When they drafted Travis Etienne.
Sorry, spoiler alert. No is the answer.
When they drafted Etienne, Urban Meyer came out and said after that, you know, they really wanted Kadarius Toney, but the Giants went and snagged him at 20, I believe.
Right.
Jags was sitting at 25, and instead of drafting Toney, they settle essentially based on what Urban Meyer said for Travis Etienne. So that's just one of those things, the unspoken part, the part you don't talk about. You don't talk about, oh, we wish we could have gotten this guy. Instead, we ended up with Etienne. I mean, how does that make your first round pick feel coming into this organization? I wasn't feeling too great about it.
And to the credit of the organization as a whole, you talk about like settling for guess what, guys? Every person that you have in order on your big board, you're gonna miscalculate. There are people who do draft day trades. You talk about how Trent Williams ended up with the 49ers. There are people who are constantly jockeying for guys in certain positioning, and there are people who are everybody's intentionally hiding who they're going to pick or who they're trying to pick. That's understandable. But the fact of the matter is like there's some legitimate credence to picking Travis Etienne. He is a former teammate of Trevor Lawrence. He is also pretty good when he was in college. Many would argue one of the best, if not the best, running back every single year that he was playing college football. There's some legitimate credence, other than the fact that he plays running back, that his wide back type, we say wide back because of the rise of Deebo Samuels and the true dual threat that he is, but his wide back ability, or back wide, I guess, because he's a running back that plays really well at wide receiver. So back wide ability is pretty high. So once again, we don't know how it's going to pan out. It could be brilliant, just like we saw Jack Doyle end up getting drafted by the Colts because he was former teammates with Andrew Luck. And of course, the biggest and best example right now is the connection that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have with each other. They're both prolific level talents that just so happen to have been teammates and already have like 3 years worth or a year worth of chemistry underneath their belt, and they're both very, very good at their role. That could very well happen with Travis Etienne. I just want to always put that out there because I feel like people are like, you took a running back like way too high in the draft, and I'm like, it could also be the exact connection that a budding quarterback needs to be able to survive the building process of a franchise. So,
yeah, me personally, I expected them to take Etienne at 25 or 33.
Right.
I predicted 33 in my final predictive mock draft, and I think it just made a lot of sense with what you're trying to do on offense. When Urban Meyer was here, you're trying to replicate. The modern example is Deebo Samuel, but the example that Urban Meyer had to lean back on was Percy Harvin.
I was going to say the original wide back, Percy Harvin.
Right. So that is what Etienne was brought in to do. So I get that role can be more valuable than just what you think of as the traditional running back role. And I thought they should have waited on it a little bit. 33, I think, would have made more sense. But at this point, you can't judge what they did because Etienne never saw the field. I mean,
right.
This is a guy that has a Liz Frank injury. Apparently, his doctors told him he could have come back late in the season, but the smartest move would have been to just, ride out the year, come back 100% healthy for training camp in 2022, and that's what he's going to do. And I like the kid a lot. I hope he does well. I mean, when I talk about prospects and players, I'm not talking about them personally. I'm talking about what they can do for a football team and how football works. So if I say I don't think Etienne should have been the pick at 25, it's not because I don't like him. I'm not rooting for him. It's because probably that value could have been had in the second round.
Right. And my biggest thing is, I got no beef with Travis Etienne, but I like James Robinson a lot. I like James Robinson.
That's another thing.
Like, it's my biggest beef with this whole situation in terms of, like, if it's going to be – because they basically torpedoed James Robinson's this last season was torpedoed for James Robinson by the coaching decisions that were made, whether it be by Urban Meyer or whether it be by the offensive coordinator or just the offensive staff as a whole, in terms of like the lack of carries that he actually got. Because every time that he touched the ball, he pretty much proved that he deserved to be able to touch it again and again and again. And a lot of people chose not, a lot of people with the Jaguar staff chose not to listen to that because everybody wants to be the cool kid. Everybody wants to be the nice, shiny passing offense and everything like that. But the fact of the matter is, you look at the 4 teams that are left in the NFL playoffs, only one of them is not run heavy. And I would say that's the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's because they have a dual threat quarterback, right? They have a true dual threat quarterback, but like the LA Rams, Cam Akers and Sony Michel basically carried, well, Cam Akers more recently, but Sony Michel carried the back half of that season for the Rams up front. And the same thing with the 49ers, Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuels have been making Jimmy Garoppolo look like a genius, basically, the way that their offense is being able to operate. So it's like one of those things where everybody thinks that passing is the only way to exist, the passing is the only way to succeed, but the fact of the matter is like, you got to be able to run the ball. Like, you got to be able to run the ball. And when you have a guy like James Robinson, who clearly shown starter caliber skill, and now you're bringing in somebody else to kind of interfere with that, it looks a little rough, especially considering coming off of a second year and knowing that James Robinson is on the cheapest deal that he can possibly be on and not taking advantage of that to possibly go out there and win games. Well, hey, what do I know? I'm just a guy that talks into a microphone.
Hey, if I was James Robinson, I might have requested a trade at some point this year.
Straight up. There have to be teams that, one, his contract has got to be like the easiest thing in the world to trade, but it's just a question of like, if the Jaguars don't value him as much, you know what I mean? Like, if the Jaguars don't value him as much as it seems like with the way that they play him, I think it's pretty good idea that maybe they get him, like somebody gets him on the cheap. That would be dope.
Yeah, I mean, and I think hopefully for Jaguars fans that situation has or will resolve itself when they hire their next head coach, whoever comes in. I mean, if they don't see the value of a James Robinson to their roster, then they probably made the wrong move as the head coaching hire.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting choice, man. Do you have power rankings in terms of the people you'd be interested in having coach? I know everybody wants Byron Leftwich because it's going to be a good story to tell and everything like that, but Byron would also be coming from an immensely talented organization, talent dense, as you can possibly say with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to a team that, I mean, like, I'm not sitting here talking about the Jaguars not having offensive talent. Their wide receivers are very effective, but the offensive line play was a little bit of a struggle this season. And of course, you're talking about a rookie quarterback who, as far as we know, has the potential to be one of the best in the game. We just haven't been able to see it.
Haven't been able to see it consistently from Trevor, and I do think that a lot of that had to do, you mentioned the receivers, they were very up and down, mostly down in my opinion. They led the league in drops.
How much of that would you credit to the injury situation, right? Because they had a bunch of really talented they had a bunch of talented wide receivers, but a good chunk of the time, their top 3 guys were hurt the entire year.
Yeah, so DJ Chark, that was the biggest domino to fall early in the season. Not just what he could do with the ball in his hands and going up and making plays, just the threat of him on the outside as the X receiver as a vertical threat. Once that was gone, it was really hard for the Jaguars receivers to create any separation, to create any vertical threat, to force defenses to respect the long ball. It was hard. And so you saw him go down, and he missed most of the season. Laviska Shenault, he really just didn't progress the way you would have expected in year 2. He had a real problem catching the ball. Put way too many passes on the ground this year. And then Marvin Jones, he was up and down. He had some fantastic performances, but I think leaning on him as your number 1 receiver at this point in his career is not going to be beneficial most times, most games. And then Jamal Agnew emerges. He was a guy that was a kick return specialist in Detroit.
And was playing defensive back.
Right. Didn't start playing wide receiver till 2020. Came into Jacksonville. He got his opportunity with injuries in front of him, and he started balling out. Of course, he got injured. Dan Arnold, the Jaguars traded C.J. Henderson for. Right. He was playing very well before he got injured, the tight end. So, yeah, injuries absolutely did play a major factor, but I still think if DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, and Laviska Shenault are your top 3, even if they're fully healthy, it's probably not up to snuff based on what we saw in 2021. Um, but yeah, I don't remember what the original question was now. We just
I
got
think it
off
was
on
just
wide receivers.
I think it was just commentary in general about what was the original question? It was preseason expectations. So coming into this season, what did you feel like the fans' expectations were for this year overall?
I think they expected a team that was going to be competitive pretty much week in and week out. They spent a fair amount of money on the defensive side of the ball. They had an offensive line that was pretty much all coming back, all five starters, which you could argue for or against that certainly, but you can never say that continuity is bad along the offensive line.
Correct.
So um, you had that. You had people were confident in Urban Meyer's plan, which obviously was completely misguided to be confident in what he was preaching. Uh, but these things revealed themselves over time, certainly. And I think defensively, people were excited about Josh Allen, pass rusher, Miles Jack, Shaquille Griffin. They brought over from Seattle, so there was some excitement about the defense. I think there was certainly more excitement on the offensive side of the ball for fans, and I don't think most fans were expecting to compete for the playoffs, but to be competitive week in and week out, and to maybe be in that bottom of that playoff conversation, at some point in December. Obviously, that didn't happen. They came out and they lost the first 5 games of the season, pretty convincingly in most of those contests. They didn't really have a chance against the Texans in Week 1, which everyone thought that was going to be maybe the worst team in NFL history. Denver, they held on and hung around in that game for a while in Week 2, but still only mustered 13 points. They really had Arizona on the ropes in Week 3. And Cincinnati, again, Thursday Night Football, they had a 21-0 lead, couldn't hold on.
Oh.
Tennessee, they lose again the next week, 37-19.
Jordon, I have a question.
Start 0-5. I mean, my goodness.
I have a question in regards to Thursday Night Football. Were you excited or disappointed that you were not playing the Tennessee Titans for the 50 billionth time on Thursday Night Football?
Definitely excited. I mean, Titans fans and Jags fans, that's like oil and water right there. You know what I'm saying? And
it's by the way, it's a classic to me in my friend group, and because half of my friends are like AFC South fans or fans of AFC South teams, that's a classic. I feel like that's more classic than the Lions playing on Thanksgiving. Like the Jags playing the Titans on Thursday Night Football is something that just, defines an NFL season. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would say because it was Joe Burrow versus Trevor Lawrence, number one pick versus number one pick, that was a really enticing and exciting matchup. And I do think it was just like a refresher for Jaguars fans to not have to see the Titans on Thursday night for what's probably like the 8th straight season or something like that.
Okay, and so we move on into the regular season, and you talked about a lot of the injuries that happened across the wide receiver position, losing DJ Chark Jr., who, if for anything, has one of the dopest chants of any player that's in the NFL. DJ Chark, Anyway, you guys know what it is.
Baby Shark.
Yeah, Baby Shark. And I'm sure they play that in the stadium when he catches. I would hope so. But I have to ask, what was the best part of the Jags season? What was the worst part of the Jags season? And I feel like you got a lot of material to choose from, so I'm just going to let you kind of figure it out, man.
Damn. I mean, it is – when you talk about best, that's a hard answer because there were not very many highlights for the Jaguars.
You trying to tell me beating the Bills was not a highlight of the season, especially in the manner that you guys beat them? You know what I mean?
No, certainly. That was great. But, that is one of maybe a couple times you could kind of say, wow, this is exciting. And that was the second win in 3 weeks for the Jaguars.
Right.
So, you thought maybe they're going to gain some momentum. So I get what you're saying there, but then it's also tough to answer what was the worst moment for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because there was just a plethora of offerings from Urban Meyer, from this team, as to what you could say was the worst moment. So instead of saying what I think was the worst moment, I'll say what I think was the turning point. I think Urban Meyer had the guys with him, the players, the coaches, for the most part, up until that week 4 at Cincinnati Thursday night contest. The Jaguars had Cincinnati dead to rights. They couldn't close. Urban Meyer goes into the press conference after the game. He's talking about how this team is heartbroken. Uh, all these things that are kind of like, inspiring, like this team is going to be able to fight through this. Then he decides not to fly back with the team to Jacksonville, which is unheard of. You've heard players, every player I've heard talk about it, former NFL player, current NFL player, has said they've never heard of a coach not flying back.
The only scenario that I've heard of that situation, if it just so happens to coincide with like a funeral that is going on. Other than that, yeah.
Otherwise, you need to be on that plane with your team, and you need to be figuring out what the hell went wrong.
Right.
Like the best coaches are working their asses off after the game, going through the film, trying to figure out what happened, why they couldn't close. Instead, he is off at his own bar, doing whatever he was doing there. Everyone's seen those videos, obviously, having a little bit too much fun. Comes back, it becomes a huge story. Clearly lies to ownership and the media about it, because right after his press conference, there's another video leaked that shows that he's an active participant in whatever was going on there. And he completely loses credibility to the ownership, to the players, to the fans, to everyone. I think that was the final punchline in terms of people really being like, okay, this is it. Urban Meyer, it's not going to work out. This is the point of no return. He's crossed the Rubicon. I think that was it, week 4. And obviously, just myriad other things happened in between week 4 and week 15 when he was fired on December 16th. So there were just so many other things. I mean, lying about the James Robinson situation, saying that it was up to the running backs coach, and saying that you'd have to ask him about why James Robinson was benched. And, of course, they didn't make the running backs coach available to speak on that matter.
Right.
Because Urban Meyer is lying through his teeth. I think he lies so much he doesn't even know that he's lying.
Yeah, no, I think he's one of those people who like says something that solves the problem right now, but doesn't think about the follow up to go along with it. Very similar to like the Joe Judge situation at the end of the season, where he was just like, I was on a team where we thought we were getting fired halfway through the season in like 2018, and then everybody went back and they're like, this is the team that eventually went on to win the Super Bowl, and you guys were 11-2 at like the halfway point of the season or something like that.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so that and a flurry of other things. But yeah, it's got to be hilarious just to hear a guy who you're like, well, got a lot of stuff to fact check, because the second that you're a person who can be like, here's a video of Urban Meyer saying something, and then in the tweet above it being like, this is not true. You trying to tell me that's not retweets and likes? Come on.
Yeah.
He's making your job easy for you, you know what I mean? There was also that other situation where they asked about that random safety, and he was like, oh, yeah, like he got some playing time, and hopefully...
Andre Cisco.
Yeah, Andre Cisco. They asked him about like, oh, yeah, he got some playing time, and hopefully we'll get him out there some more. And then they're like, Andre Cisco did not play at all and has not played in 2 weeks. So that's why they asked him about defensive snaps. He could have just been like, can't tell you. So do not know, have not seen that guy ever before. Are you sure he's on the roster? I'm sure that would be, because I don't know, man. People pretend like they want to hear the truth, but like, sometimes that's what Urban Meyer's about. He's like, do you really want me to tell you the truth? I could, or I could give you this really funny lie. That's what he's doing. He's trying to make everybody's day better. He's trying to help your life, Jordan, because how like, think about this. If you take all the Urban Meyer bullshit, how boring would this season have been? It just would have been a bunch of losing, a bunch of close games in certain situations, a bunch of not finishing, right? And none of the fun stuff off the field. None of the coaches kicking players in pregame, right? Like, come on.
I personally, I have learned to thrive on these types of stories that are going on, but I started this. I like to write about football.
Right.
I like to cover what is going on with a football team. I mean, this was like entertainment of the highest order. Like, this was like TMZ all year instead of a NFL organization, a football team. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I feel like,
I mean, everyone had some fun with it, right? But for me, like I said, I'm here for football.
You're a true football guy. That makes you, I guess, more of a football guy than the actual head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars this past season. So the guy's won multiple national championships. Anyway,
crazy.
If there's one thing about Urban Meyer, he knows how to identify talent. I will never be able to take that away from him. I mean, honestly, you think about the number of NFL players, like, legitimately, I'm not even saying that as a joke. I mean, like, there's a reason that Urban Meyer's gotten as far in life as a football coach as he has. One, he's opportunistic at all times, right? He is not above being like, I'm going to go take this better job. That's what happened at Utah and all that jazz like that. It's what happened when he left Florida and eventually popped up at Ohio State a year later, all that kind of stuff. But dude knows how to identify talent. Even the dudes that didn't make it in his program went on to be, like, ridiculously great. Like Cam Newton. Like, come on. You know what I mean? But other than that, man. So the regular season's over. There was almost zero chance that the Jags were going to make the playoffs vast majority of the season. At the end of the year, based off of what you were saying most fans were feeling, it was a little bit of a disappointment that coming out with under 500 on the season overall, having all those games not go their way. And then, of course, losing a head coach after just 1 year. Little did we know, he would turn out to be one of two coaches fired after 1 year in the AFC South. But I move on to the offseason, man. What has to be the goal of the Jacksonville Jaguars? Not even just the draft, but, like, currently on the roster that's going on right now. Let's start with free agency. Who do you think is going to be lost in terms of guys that are moving on to another team? Who you think potentially could be in line for, like, a big payday with the squad coming up pretty soon?
Well, because we don't know who the head coach is going to be, we don't know if Trent Baalke's still going to be in power at GM. It's hard to say, but the number one goal for this organization needs to be surrounding Trevor Lawrence with a better support system and with better offensive line protection, better weapons to throw the ball to. Everything just needs to be better and more functional around Trevor Lawrence. But when you look at the in-house free agents, Cam Robinson played this year under the franchise tag. He has an expiring contract. He's a starting left tackle.
Right.
Is he worth what you're going to have to pay him on the open market? I believe his market value is in the mid-teens, 16, 17 million, something like that, per season. I can't see paying a guy that's a slightly above average left tackle that type of money, especially when you got Walker Little, who you drafted in the second round, who came in when Cam Robinson was injured at the end of the season and played as well, if not better than Cam Robinson, despite not really playing football in 2 years. He's a rookie. He didn't participate in 2020 because of COVID, obviously, and the Pac-12's approach to all of that was very ass backwards a little bit there. And then he didn't play in 2019 because of an ACL tear that he sustained in week 2 of that season. So he's a guy that came in and played really well. I don't see you paying Cam Robinson the type of money he's going to command when you've got Walker Little waiting in the wings and you've got potential to go draft one of the top tackles in the class in the draft in April. I just can't see paying Cam Robinson that type of money. And then DJ Chark, he's also he was in the last year of his rookie contract in 2021. He got injured, obviously. We don't know what his market's going to be like, but this is a guy that's 6'3", 200 pounds, runs a 4.3, crazy catch radius, can stretch the field. I know he's been injured a lot, but if he can stay healthy, he's going to make some team's fan base very excited over the next few years. Mm-hmm. So those are the two big names you're looking at.
Those are the two big guys coming up in terms of free agency. And then, of course, the question looms. All those guys are going to have to learn a new playbook coming up this season, offense and defensive side of the ball, which, of course, sets you back. It delays you in terms of any potential success you could have in a lot of different scenarios because you can't really get like a great assessment off of people who are learning a totally new offensive playbook and offensive scheme and timing and situational stuff like that. But hopefully, we'll see. They'll get some kind of answer here soon because the spots are filling up, Chicago was the first one. Chicago was the first team to lock up somebody out of the 8 spots that were opened. So we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, they landed Eberflus, who was, according to many, Jacksonville's second option. Matt Eberflus, the Colts defensive coordinator.
Right.
And then you see Nathaniel Hackett, who was also scheduled reportedly for a second interview with the Jaguars. He just signed on with Denver. I think they're making their play for Aaron Rodgers over there, as Hackett has worked with him for the last couple of seasons.
Right.
So, yeah, the market is starting to dwindle. I think there's power plays going back and forth between the Jaguars and Byron Leftwich's camp. He's clearly the apple of their eye. It's been pretty obvious on that front for a while. But you've got the Jaguars saying, oh, well, now we interviewed Vic Fangio. He's a candidate for the job. You've got Byron's camp going out there and talking about the New Orleans Saints job is open now. He's going to be a candidate for that job. So I think you've got a lot of just really negotiation that's pretty contentious going back and forth. I think Byron Leftwich wants the job. I think he wants Adrian Wilson with him in Jacksonville as the general manager. He's been the director of pro personnel for the Cardinals for a few years, and obviously a lot of people will remember him from his playing days over with the Cardinals. He was one of the hardest hitting safeties in football for about a decade for the Cardinals, and he made 5 Pro Bowls, all pro. I mean, that guy was a stud, and he's been a really fast riser in the executive rankings in the NFL. He's now the VP of pro personnel for the Cardinals, and I think if you can get 2 guys that are aligned in their vision and their trust with each other, their cooperation and collaboration, you could be in for a real treat in Jacksonville. But they're making it difficult. They're playing hardball with these negotiations, and so we're really not sure where it's going to settle. I still think Byron will end up being the Jaguars head coach, but they're doing everything they can to make this as difficult as possible.
So I have to ask, and getting closer to the draft, of course, none of the draft stuff can happen until people start getting into the building and they're assessing overall like where the state of the franchise is and talent assessment and all that kind of jazz like that. But based off of just like the general talent assessment of like the overall draft scouting, draft season group of people, man, and in particular you talked about how you launched your own draft assessment. First of all, can you plug where people can find your drafts and everything like that? Did you already drop your mock draft 1.0?
I have not done a full mock for the NFL yet. I definitely will have that down the road. And it's thedraftjournal.com. It's just my personal little piece of the internet to write about the draft, write scouting reports, columns, mock drafts, big boards, all the fun stuff leading up to draft season. And I've been having a really good time with it. Again, that's thedraftjournal.com. It's mostly scouting reports right now, a few columns. I'm just kind of working my way through the class and having a really good time doing it.
Dope. And make sure you also check out Generation Jag, like you said. But yeah, you've done a draft. You're starting your draft assessment. Of course, everybody hasn't watched everybody's film, right? Like everybody's watched college football games in and of themselves, but everybody's got to watch the all-22 and kind of assess like speed and everything like that. And there's already people talking about like Jacoby Dean's not even going to be the first linebacker off the board. Like there's some guy from Utah that I haven't watched.
Devin Lloyd. That's my guy.
Yeah, so I was like freaked out when people were like, that guy's like faster than Jacoby Dean, and I was like, how is that even humanly possible? So that
I don't know if he's faster.
I mean, that's
Jacoby
what
Dean is a little spark plug, man. He's something else.
Yeah, no, prolific, like next level type stuff. But hopefully you probably won't be talking about him because that's like a luxury position for a lot of defenses. But who do you think the Jags should be, or what position group do you think the Jags should be targeting in the upcoming draft? Because it is, once again, we keep saying this over and over again. We're trying to temper the expectation for the people that don't pay attention to the draft as much, people who have no idea what's supposed to go down, because everybody's default is like, oh, draft a quarterback. You never know, draft a quarterback. And this year, everybody's been trying to say it for like a year now, and they're like, this is not a quarterback draft, guys. It is going to be a defense and offensive line draft. And they keep saying that, but we all know that that's not going to stop any team in the NFL from drafting Kenny Pickett in the top 10. But, what do I know?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The elite quarterback talent isn't there. I mean, if you just look at last year's draft compared to this year's draft, where would Kenny Pickett be among the quarterbacks in last year's draft? Sixth, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe?
and it may be a stretch because you could talk about there. I mean, we're all pretty poor overall at assessing how different conferences translate to the next level and stuff like that. But like Kenny Pickett playing at Pitt was definitely going to affect his draft situation overall. But yeah, you're right. He'd probably be like six. He'd probably be like six for sure.
Yeah. So that tells you everything you need to know there. And then because there's no elite quarterbacks in this class, it makes the top of the draft a little bit more wide open than normal, I would say. And because there's no real consensus elite talent, there's going to be a lot of different projections for the Jaguars at number one. I mean, you'll see Aiden Hutchinson, defensive end out of Michigan. You'll see Kayvon Thibodeau, the edge out of Oregon. You'll see all sorts of different names. My name right now, I've evaluated all these top guys. I don't think there's a better football player in this draft on the offensive side of the ball than Evan Neal, the offensive tackle from Alabama. For me, he and Kyle Hamilton are the two best prospects in this class. I think they're, for me, again, this is all very subjective, they're in a tier above everyone else. And I love Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame. I just don't see how you take him number one when you just took Andre Sisco in the third round last year, and he played pretty well once he actually got on the field.
Right.
Once Urban Meyer was out in Jacksonville, he's a guy I just don't think it makes the most sense to support Trevor Lawrence with a safety, even if he is in my mind, generational talent at that position. He's like a Derwin James type talent. Kyle Hamilton is, in my opinion. So yeah, Evan Neal, 6'7", 360 pounds. The way he moves at that size is unbelievable to me. And I know people talk about his balance issues. They pop up late in plays. Guess what has happened over the first 3 or 4 seconds of that play?
The ball's gone.
He has dominated your ass every single time. It's not something that happens early in plays. Like, he has good lateral agility, mobility. It's just sometimes when he's working at that second level, the balance isn't quite there. And again, 6'7", 360 pounds. Very, very athletic. I think he's a home run. I really think he's going to be a Pro Bowl offensive tackle. And then you talk about his versatility. If you don't want to play him at left tackle because you like Walker Little, put him over on the right side. If you have good tackles, you can play this guy at guard early on in his career. He can play anywhere you want him to, and he has. He's played the right tackle position at Alabama in 2020, left tackle in 2021, and as a freshman before that, he played guard. I think he's a home run in terms of all those traits, and he's a self-motivated guy. He's going to work hard. He's going to get better, and I think the sky is the limit for how good he could be.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the eye of everybody's prize. In case you haven't been paying attention to the draft situation, a lot of people get enamored with the pass rushing and all the crazy stuff, and oh man, love a chop club, love a spin move. Everybody, shout out Dwight Freeney, but you need the guy who can stop those dudes. You also need the guy who's going to prevent your quarterback from hitting the ground 9 times. We saw that in the playoffs. Not everybody's got Joe Burrow at the quarterback position, so you can't bank on 9 sacks not affecting your ability to win a game. But on that note, Jordan, please tell everyone where they can find things to help you become famous and rich.
You can find things at genjag.com. That's where I have all my latest Jaguars news and analysis, podcasts. All that fun stuff is genjag.com. Again, thedraftjournal.com for draft coverage, scouting reports, big boards. And then you can follow myself at Jordan DeLugo on Twitter, and Generation Jaguar is at Generation Jag on Twitter. The Draft Journal is at The Draft Journal on Twitter. That's everything. That's where you can find me. How you can help support me.
Do it. Make them famous. We can all get rich. Once again, this is the Broke Boys Sports Podcast with the ultimate goal of signing a $100 million contract with whatever podcasting platform will fall for it, and then immediately stop doing the podcast. And having Jordon on there has gotten us one step closer to the clout that we need to have to get to that point. But make sure you go support Jordon if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, or if you just like being well informed about NFL teams overall, because I know it can be very easy to be like just overwhelmed with the number of people who cover teams. Jordon has been doing it for a long time, and remember, it comes from the place that makes it most potent, the heart, because he's a fan. He wants the Jags to hoist the Super Bowl trophy, unlike me. You know, I mentally can't handle any other team in the AFC South other than the Texans contending, even making it to the Super Bowl right now, because it just hurts that much. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back at some point. I don't know when you're watching this. It could be in the distant future, like in the year 2027, if we make it that far. But
that'd be wild.
It would be wild to make it that far.
Somebody's popping this on in 2027?
You never know. Jordan, you could literally be the greatest reporter in the history of sports by the time 2027 rolls around. They want to know where you started off at. And I'm just glad that we could be a part of the story. Appreciate you coming on the show, man.
I appreciate you. It was a great conversation, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
No doubt, as always, man. And hopefully it won't be in the same position talking about top draft picks for both of our teams.
No doubt.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Who are you looking for the Texans?
For the Texans, honestly, man, I was hoping that Will Anderson was going to come out for the draft this year, but have to wait another year. But have to wait another year. That's the only thing that I want the next 2 years, Will Anderson. But yeah, offensive line is definitely the move. Everybody's talking about pass rush, and Texans fans love white defensive ends, aka JJ Watt. So
understandable, I guess.
Yeah, so they got that going on. But yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes, because a lot of people were talking about the safety that we were talking about before, because Nick Caserio likes to build from the secondary down, which is understandable, because if you can stop the pass, you can stop a lot of teams in the NFL. So generational talent will be sick, because we are definitely losing Jordan Reed after this season. So that's tough. But yeah, we're out of here. We'll be back. I don't know. Oh, wait, no, I do know who the next team will be. The next team, our old friend Brooke Pryor, who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers for ESPN, when we come back next time on the Exit Interviews for the Broke Boys Sports Podcast.